good Tuesday morning. I'm so glad you're with us. I'm absolutely loving this chapter. Well, I always have loved this chapter that you and I are studying together this week. It's John chapter 21. And why? Because first of all, it's a lot of interesting events take place. But second of all, there's so much truth about Jesus revealed in this chapter. Yesterday, we talked about how these are eyewitness reports that Jesus, this person who was on the shore right there at the Sea of Tiberias, was indeed the same person whom John had lived and traveled with for 3 years. And then he wrote this. Now, moving on from that, actually, today's truth that I want to see revealed and talked about is in one way similar, because no one else other than the sovereign Lord, Creator God could rise from the dead and conquer death. But if that's who he was, there should be other evidences that that's who he was. And indeed, that's another reason I love this chapter. There are 3 miracles talked about here that have no other logical explanation other than this was God himself who controls it all. What am I talking about? Well, let me ask you this one other thing. Have you ever gone fishing? Of course, I think most all of us would say yes. And sometimes it almost seems like a miracle if we catch something. Sometimes it has to do with where you're fishing. And so some places you do catch nothing. You don't even get a bite. And other places, you can hardly help but catch fish. Now, I've only fished that way maybe once or twice in my life, but I loved the fishing in Alaska, where literally every time I lowered my bait where we were fishing, I caught a halibut. And it was just a matter of, well, is it big enough to keep? I'd reel it in. I've never had fishing like that. So in that place, in fact, I could hardly keep from catching fish. But it was random, and it happened or didn't happen, and that's how fishing is. I mean, you can be a better fisherman, of course, and go where the fish are and all that. Well, this day, Jesus was standing on the shore of the Sea of Tiberias, and all his disciples that were there went out fishing. And they were professional fishermen, by the way. That's what they did for a living. And so let's read about those miracles. Verse 4. So early the next morning, Jesus stood on the shore. But the disciples didn't realize at first that it was Jesus. And he called out to them, "Friends, haven't you caught any fish?" "No," they answered. "Well, then throw your nets on the right side of the boat and you will find some." And when they did, they were unable to haul in the net because of the large number of fish. I consider this two miracles that are mentioned. What are they? Number one, that all night, these professional fishermen who knew where they were fishing, who knew what they were doing, caught how many fish? 0. They caught no fish. Now, that didn't happen very often, because if it did, there's no way they could have been fishermen. There's no way you could earn a living catching 0 fish. So even before Jesus got there and tells them to put their net on the other side, I view it that Jesus was already controlling the fish and making them swim where he wanted them to swim. And for all night long, he had all the fish stay away from that net. So they move it, what? What do you think? 10 feet to the other side of the boat and put it down. And all of a sudden, there are so many fish in the net, they can't haul it in. It was too heavy. I mean, eventually they do. And it was a struggle. It was a struggle. But you see what happened? Jesus had sovereignty over where the fish in the Sea of Tiberias on that day, at that time, where they swim. That, friends, is power. Power. I mean, have you ever tried to, if you had a fish tank or anything, have you ever, the only thing that would make the fish swim toward you or something is if you had food. But basically, you can't control where fish swim. But Jesus could. And Jesus did. He did. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved says, "It is the Lord." And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It's the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him and jumped into the water. And the other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they weren't far from shore, maybe only 100 yards. And when they landed, they saw a fire burning coals there with fish on it. I love verse 11, too. Simon Peter climbed aboard and dragged the net ashore. It was full of fish, 153. And here's where the next miracle is. But even with so many fish in it, the net was not torn. Evidently, with that many fish, that much weight, the normal thing that would have happened is the net would have torn as they loaded that onto the shore. They would have had to re-sew it. And Jesus cared enough about them that he even sovereignly made sure that their net did not tear. I mean, to us, that seems like a small miracle, doesn't it? Well, it's not that important. You know why that's not that important to us? We're not fishermen. It clearly was enough important to them because it's recorded in the Bible. Why, if that wasn't surprising to them, then it wouldn't be recorded. But it was. And you know what? I just think that that even shows that Jesus cared about the small thing. By the way, some would say, well, then why do I need to worry about it? Jesus can just make the fish swim into the net. What's your business? I mean, does he just take care of us and miraculously make us successful at whatever we do? I would point out this. Those men were doing their job. They were fishing. They did their part. Had they not even have gone to work, then Jesus couldn't have done his miracles. No, it took them doing their part. The Bible talks about doing our diligent best self at whatever we do, whether it's in ministry on Sundays or whenever, or is it in our job or whatever. We do our part, and Jesus will answer and do his part. He blessed them. He blessed them. And when we look at that Jesus controls everything because he's God, we can have peace in life. There is no reason to worry, is there? If you have any worry, if you're concerned about something today, give it to Jesus, who can make the fish swim away from the net, and then he could make the fish swim into the net, and he even kept the net in good repair. That's the kind of God you and I have. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, come to the Father through Jesus the Son, and give